Learn the most empowering hiring techniques. Land the most desirable talent. Launch your company towards massive success. This is the Higher Power Radio Show with your host, Rick Gerard.
All right, the classic blunder that I have seen hundreds of times in my career is what I like to call the vanity hire. Pulling out all the stops to get someone from a name brand company who in your mind is the answer to all your prayers. But the reality is the person most often turns into be the cause of every future nightmare, not fitting in with the culture, the pace, or the expectations of the team. This happens because your little entrepreneurial venture is not truly what the person desires. I'm Rick Gerard, and welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show. We help entrepreneurs and business leaders hire the strongest people. We do this by sharing insights from top-performing rebel entrepreneurs, disruptors, and industry experts like our guest today, Mr. Forrest Derr. Now, Forrest is the COO and integrator of Sexton Lawn and Landscape. Forrest began his journey in the working world as a small business owner managing a paper route in his neighborhood. I think Mark Cuban did the same thing. He obtained a business management degree from the University of Mobile and worked for an office furniture company for about 18 years, which provided experience in sales, operations, technology, and customer satisfaction. He also honed his skills in inventory management, team scheduling, and technology integration. Forrest actually ascended up to the level of VP of operations. And while there, he had sold a tech consulting business. So in 2015, Forrest joined a company called AltaWorks, broadening his expertise in data center management, finance, and marketing as the president. And now he's part of the Sexton Lawn and Landscape company, where he's leading their team into the future, leveraging EOS as their guiding business frameworks, which is what makes Forrest the perfect expert for today's topic. Forrest, welcome to the Higher Power Radio Show today.
Glad to be here, Rick. Thanks for inviting me.
Getting back into the groove of this podcast today after being off for a year.
But you have a good haircut, so I think we're safe there.
God made a few perfect heads, the rest he put hair on.
That's something right, like that. Exactly. I resemble that remark. So.
Yes, you do. All right. So as I led up to in the intro, we're going to talk about what I like to call the vanity hire. We have a tendency as entrepreneurs to delve into and want to hire industry experts or people who come from an existing gene pool, so to speak, of, hey, these sell to our customers. Maybe they're a larger company. And this is always, I've seen throughout my career, been a very big problematic hire because of the fact that people are just trained and they operate differently. And it's kind of like putting a triangle into a round hole. Like it's completely way more difficult than what we think. And I see it happen a lot of times in tech, especially where we were able to get this guy out of Facebook. Woo! Super excited about somebody out of a name brand company. Right. And almost every time within 6 months, it blows up.
Definitely have lived that and seen that a couple of different times. I was in the telecom space, work for a VoIP and internet provider, and I will remain nameless who the major carrier was. Let's just say it started with an A. There were a couple of major carrier employees that we ended up recruiting and hiring over the years that I was there. And every time we thought it would work out, every time we thought we could make it work, and it just never did.
Yeah. So you hired a guy out of a large organization thinking, hey, look, they bring all the skills. They could probably bring some of their structure,
some of their network. Some of their connections,
everything else, right?
Yeah.
And you're thinking just because they worked at a big company, they must be successful.
Right. Yeah. This guy in particular, it was interesting because he was our vendor rep for that major carrier. And so we had a relationship and knew who he was, knew how he operated, had known him for several years, and just really felt like he could be aligned with what we were doing. Plus, he's got the industry experience. He has the network. He knows the people. And it just felt like it might be a good fit. I will say that I did have the disclaimer conversation with him. I sat down with him over dinner before he took the job, and I wanted to make sure I laid it out pretty clearly. This is a small business. This is not a major corporation. I think we probably had 20 people at the time, maybe 17, 18 people. So a very small organization, and tried to explain it to him, and he convinced himself and me that this was the right decision. But that quickly unraveled.
Did he come to you guys, or did you go after him?
He came to us, and he knew that we were looking for somebody, And it just kind of fell into place. And he was like, well, why don't we talk about me joining forces with you? And then we're like, hey, we got a guy from a major carrier that wants to, take a step into a smaller company. Man, this has got to be a good fit, right?
Famous last words.
Of course, you do a press release and advertise. We've got a former, employee from a major carrier coming and joining our team. We must have it going on if we did that, right?
Okay, so he came on board. Fast forward, he failed. What was kind of the problem behind it? Like, where did he have a hard time?
He had a hard time fitting in and realizing that it was actually going to take work. A lot of these people at these major companies, whether it's a carrier or a major corporation, they have a tendency to have the ability to just kind of fly under the radar and hide from actual hard work. And, this role required getting on the phone and going out and seeing people and actually prospecting and building up a pipeline of opportunities. And he literally just wanted to wait for a lead to come in, wait for a lead to come into the website, or wait for, opportunity to come from one of us where we had somebody in our network that needed him to talk to somebody. So the biggest failure was probably that he just didn't understand working in a small business and versus working in a large business. But then also he just was not a culture fit. He was a good vendor relations guy for us. But then when we brought him inside the company, even though he had seen inside the company, he just didn't understand that, that culture is strong and we follow the core values and made sure that people align with those.
And I have a little bit of a theory about this. Usually when somebody from a large company approaches you, I think it's because they're about to get fired.
Yeah.
Maybe because they weren't performing well there. I've seen a lot of people that have dropped out of, again, really big tech companies.
Yeah.
And smaller companies just make the assumption, well, gosh, if Facebook hired them or somebody else hired them, then they must be good.
Yeah, and they're just a number to those big corporations. They may have 5,000 employees. Those people don't even blip on the radar. So it's very easy to get through that hiring process and get on board with them, and it maybe even stick around. It might take a year or 2 or 3 years before they get found out if they're not really actually working very.
That's very true. That's why I like to call these vanity hires as an entrepreneur. And look, man, if we could just get this person, it's going to make everything fantastic, right? They're going to make a huge difference. And I've talked to so many entrepreneurs on this show and outside in conversations where they all say the same story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man, we had to come up with more money and we had to jump through all these hoops to get this person. And then 3 months later, 6 months later, a year, God forbid, a year later, but then they figure out, well, there's not really what's going on here isn't really what we thought was going on here, right?
Right. Well, and this guy, I guess this was pre-COVID. This guy worked remote, and most of our team worked in the office. So that was probably another factor, which took us a little bit longer to figure out what was going on with him. And whether he was actually going to be a fit and whether he was actually, working and building the pipeline that he needed to. So there were some other factors that probably, made it more difficult for us to identify fairly quickly what was going on.
Gotcha. Are you listening to the Higher Power Radio Show? For our podcast listeners, we're going to take a quick educational moment from our sponsors.
Hi, I'm Stephen Rothberg.
And I'm Jeanette Leeds.
And together, we're the co-hosts of the High Volume Hiring Podcast.
Are you involved in hiring dozens or even hundreds of employees a year? If so, you know that the typical sourcing tools, tactics, and strategies, they just don't scale.
Yeah. Our bi-weekly podcast features news, tips, case studies, and interviews with the world's leading experts about the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to high-volume hiring.
Make sure to subscribe today.
All right, I'm digging in deep with our guest, Forrest Derr. Forrest is the COO and integrator for Sexton Lawn and Landscape. And we're discussing vanity hires, being wooed by the big name and, lighting that firecracker and it becoming a dud. So let's talk about how you solved the problem, right? So I would imagine you probably started with firing them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That was the first step for sure. Yeah, but I'll say we were kind of dense because we tried to do it, I think, 3 more times, thinking that, that was just a dud and we can go find another major carrier employee. We'll turn this guy around. He'll be the rock star that we needed. Whoops, that one didn't work. Then I think we did it 3 more times after that. So slow learning of the process for sure.
At least it wasn't 4 or 5. You should be happy about that. Yay, right?
Yay, right.
If you think about that, that probably cost you and your business quite a significant amount of money. Okay, so now we've learned, what do we do to fix the problem?
We transitioned to where we started hiring based off of core values and core value fit. Basically, core value fit first, industry second. Industry experience is great, sure. Network's great. There's good people out there. But when I left the organization at the time, I think we had 27 or 28 people. And I think 2 of them were industry employees. Everybody else was non-industry. And what we found is that the non-industry people performed better than trying to go hire an industry person. Huge part of it was core value fit for sure. Yeah. But then other part of it is just in the larger industries, you have to unlearn a bunch of behaviors. And it's very hard to transition somebody that's been in large industry for 25, 30 years and get them into a small business mindset. So hiring based off core values was a game changer for us.
One of the things that I found one of the things that I've learned was that people who come from other industries into your industry, they have something to learn. And they look at it more like a growth opportunity rather than somebody who already kind of knows it all.
Right.
You're right. They almost have a really difficult time learning your way or your method or your business because they've already spent a very long, significant amount of time in a business that operated a certain way. All right. So focused on people skills rather than industry skills and core values. So let's break those 2 things down. Mm-hmm. What were you looking for from a skills perspective?
From a skills perspective, what we decided and determined, it was really more about project management, time management, and people skills. For example, we had a sheriff dispatcher who ended up being a project manager. Well, sheriff dispatching doesn't, quote, align with telecom project managing, but a sheriff dispatcher is dealing with lots of vendors, lots of calls, lots of communications, managing lots of pieces of resources. And how do you align those to get the desired result? It worked out great. That person was a great project manager,
and they probably managed stress really well, right?
It was a refreshing for them to come from that environment to come to telecom. Oh my gosh, your internet's not working. Nobody died. I'm not stressed out. We can get the internet connection working, right? So really focusing on people that understood how to manage things and manage people and knew how to communicate. I think that's where the crux of it is not, did they understand what a T1 was or a fiber circuit or a VoIP switch or whatever? We can teach that kind of stuff. It's those soft skills that are very difficult to teach in the industry.
So I love the fact that what you guys did was went outside of the norm. You were able to look beyond the fact that, the resume said 911 dispatcher and be able to something in that person that would translate that success over.
Yeah. And that's been a similar story here at Sexton. So, I've been at Sexton now for 8 months. And what's interesting is I had a relationship with the owner of the company where he and I were on a board together. And so we spent some time together, and in conversations with him before I started here, one of the things we talked about, he kept talking about how he was struggling to find good landscapers. And I'm like, well, why are you looking for landscapers? Well, they got to know how to do landscaping. I'm like, but do they? Or do you just need to find a project manager that you could convert and teach them how to do landscaping? That was a discussion that we had numerous times before I ended up joining the company. And now we have shifted the mindset here to let's go find good people. Let's go find good people that have skills that can be transferable. So instead of going out and trying to find a, quote, landscape project manager, let's go find a project manager. Somebody that knows how to manage. They could be from construction. They could be from office furniture. I don't care what they are. But if they know how to manage projects and manage people, we can teach them what a dingo is. And I didn't know what that was until I started here.
Isn't that a dog?
It is a dog, but it's also a heavy piece of equipment that allows you to move things. So it's almost like an excavator. Did not know what it was until I started here 8 months ago. So
I thought it was like the dingo ate my baby.
That dingo ate my baby. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. That was my first thought when they said, you're going to get to learn what a dingo was. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Sounds like a dog, but okay, I'll go check it out. So, but I'm a perfect example. I mean, I came telecom. I was, president of a telecom company. And I still have people to this day go, what the heck are you doing? Why did you leave telecom? You were in telecom for 8 years or 8.5 years. I'm like, yeah, but I understand business and people and structure, and I understand EOS, and that's transferable. The people here that work with me had their doubts when I got here, but 8 months later, they're like, okay, I get it now. You didn't understand the acronyms that we were using, but you get it now. And it's really just about people. So
ultimately, that's what the business is about.
Yeah.
Great segue into core values. How are you finding people that align with core values?
Well, I guess let me go back and talk a little bit about how we transitioned the previous company to focus on core values. We were interviewing people and asking them about the core values. So I think we had 6 core values at the time. And, it was one of those things where you read the core value and say, hey, help first. Do you like to help first? Oh, yeah, I love to help. How about taking ownership and being responsible? Oh, man, I'm the most responsible person you'll ever meet. How about humility? Man, you've never met somebody as humble as I am. They totally agree with everything you say. And so we did that for about a year or so and really, really, really struggled to get it dialed in until somebody flipped the switch and caught our attention and said, you don't need to ask them, tell them about a core value and then ask them about whether they agree with it, because they're going to agree with it. You need to focus on questions around the core values and help them guide the question to where you get the answer, yay or nay, or whether you're looking for, but don't ask a direct question. So that was the transition that we had to do.
I've never had anybody say, no, I don't align with your core values, especially looking for a job.
Or it's like asking you, what's your strength and weakness? My weakness is I work too hard. Yeah. Right.
Exactly. So how do you disguise those questions?
It's a challenge. I will tell you that. So it's not easy, because I will say in every position I've had in the last 2 companies for sure, it's easy to try to sell the company to the employee. And so you almost want to convince them that this is a great place to work. And so you got to be careful about how you communicate with the core values, but really asking questions that are not yes or no, asking them to tell you a story. Like one of our core values is humility. So tell me about a time where you had to deal with something that was difficult, where you wanted to take credit, but you really couldn't, rightfully take credit. So you had to take the back seat for whatever reason. And that may not be a good one, but that's the kind of example that you need to do. Don't use the word humility, but talk to them about and get them to tell you a story rather than asking yes or no. Do you agree with humility?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there, like disguising the question. You can't use humility in there. And actually, you want to disguise it a little bit more so that they have trouble figuring out what you're evaluating them for, because the purpose of the interview is to understand the truth about that human, and for them to understand the truth about your company. Nobody wants to fail in a new job, and you don't want anybody certainly to join and fail. I just spoke with somebody the other day, and they told me this joke, and I was like, what do you call a conversation between 2 liars? And I'm like, what? An interview.
That's fair. That's fair for sure. Yeah.
There's a lot of truth to that, because we go into it with a selling mentality. Let's find some commonality here. Like, do we operate on the same level? And if we don't, great, no problem. Let's just move on.
And it's definitely difficult if you're in a crunch where you've got to have people. I mean, I think that's when I've seen the most challenges here and at the other organization is really when you are desperate for that manpower and you really need manpower and you try to squeeze somebody in and make excuses for core value fit. Like, they're a little humble, not really humble. I think I can work on them. It's almost like the girlfriend that tries to convert, the husband into who she needs him to be, but he's never going to be what she really needs. As far as, core value alignment and core value questions, one of the areas that kind of triggered me to think about this, besides somebody mentioned it to me, is I'm an Enneagram 3, and I don't know who all knows about Enneagrams on the radio, but
fill me in.
So Enneagram is kind of like a personality profile, and so it basically you're a 1 through a 9. There's different facets of each one. I'm a 3, so I'm an achiever. The joke in my office is I like to have trophies. I like to be recognized for being successful. And so people will put trophies on my desk and mess with me just for fun. And my wife is a 6, so she's an Enneagram 6, which, it's somebody that's constantly thinking about things and thinking about multiple scenarios and, kind of a prepper. So she prepares for things. You go in the back of her car and she's got a go bag with everything you should ever need in an emergency.
She's in the CIA.
That's right. But that process, we went through a class where we learned what our Enneagram number, and it really helped us get to know each other better. The reason why I bring that up is when you take the test for an Enneagram or Colby or any of those, it doesn't say, are you an Enneagram 3? Yes or no. It asks you about 35 questions that are around the subject to then make an interpretation and say, okay, based off this information, you're probably a 75% fit for a number 3. And so those core value questions, I think that's where the secret sauce is to build your core values and define them well enough that you can ask multiple questions around them so that then you can make an evaluation. Do you really feel like they're a core value fit?
I'd like to drill down a little bit deeper into the behaviors. When nobody's looking, behave that way naturally. And if they, if they do, then, winner, chicken dinner. But if they don't, you're just setting yourself up for failure. And you did bring up a really good point. When you're pressed and you need somebody, every time I've done that, it's never worked out well for me.
Yeah. Even taking it further, the challenge as well is when you've got people inside the company and they apply for a role and you interview them again just to see if they're a good fit. And when you elevate somebody into the wrong role and then have to de-elevate them, that's where it gets real messy.
Right person, right seat is very, very important from the very get-go.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Sheer. Well, we're getting pretty close on time. Forrest, what would you say would be 2 or 3 key takeaways you can give the audience to get plugged into the business today?
Don't hire too quickly. Make sure that you're getting the right person in the right seat. Don't try to force somebody into a seat when they're not a core value fit. Second, make sure that you have your core values clearly defined and clearly documented, but then have questions that are structured around not asking direct questions around your core values, but ask questions that help you understand, are they a core value fit? So those are probably the 2 big things that I would say.
Forrest, thanks so much for your time invested today. And I want to welcome you to the Higher Power Radio community. Now, what would be the best way in which members of the audience can find you, find Sexton?
Definitely look me up on LinkedIn. I think there's only 2 Forrest Derrs out there, so it should be pretty easy to locate out there. And then Sexton website, sextonlandscapes.com.
All right. Well, I want to thank our listening audience for tuning in to this week's episode of Higher Power. Quick thanks to our team, Brian Colburn, Andrea Ballin, and Ayla Gerard. If you're listening to the podcast, please subscribe, review, and share. After all of this content's for you. We want to bring you valuable content week after week that you can plug into your business right away. You can join the Higher Power Radio community at Higher, H-I-R-E, Power, P-O-W-E-R, radio, R-A-D-I-O.com, or drop me an email at rick@intertrue.ai. All right, I'm your host, Rick Gerard, and you have been listening to the Higher Power Radio Show. Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Higher Power Radio. Catch our LinkedIn Live show every Tuesday at noon, or download the podcast on iHeartRadio, iTunes, YouTube, or your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate you joining us on Higher Power Radio with your guide to hiring success, Rick Gerard.